I want to start with a number. 43 million. That is approximately how many homes exist in the United States built before 1980. 43 million structures, each one holding decades of accumulated living. Floors walked on thousands of times. Walls that have absorbed every conversation, every argument, every unexplained sound in the dark. In the last 4 years, I have received more than 9,000 submissions from people across this country who found something inside their homes that they couldn't explain. Not sounds, not feelings, objects, physical, tangible things. Things that were placed, modified, or appeared in ways that had no rational accounting. Most of those people did what people do. They rationalized. They forgot. They chalked it up to memory, to aging, to the ordinary chaos of a shared life in a shared space. 7 of them couldn't do that. 7 of them kept returning to what they found, the way you return to a sentence that doesn't parse. Running it again and again and still arriving at the same place where the logic stops. Tonight, those are the 7 I'm bringing you. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm going to tell you what they found. And then I'm going to let you sit with the question that every single one of them is still sitting W. How did it get there? Story 1. The photographs in the wall. Submitted by Bev, 58, location. Knoxville, Tennessee. Incident, 2022. Bev is a retired school principal. She bought her 1940s bungalow in 2018 and spent the next 4 years renovating it herself, room by room on weekends. She is not a fanciful person. She described herself to me as constitutionally opposed to nonsense. In the spring of 2022, removing a wall in the rear bedroom to expose the original brick, she found something in the cavity between the lathe and the brick X. Terrier. A bundle of photographs, wrapped in a piece of cotton cloth, tied with kitchen string. Old photographs, the kind with the scalloped edges. 22 of them. Mostly the same woman, different ages. Some with children. All taken in what I eventually determined was the same backyard. My backyard decades earlier. Different trees. The garage before it was extended. She did what any curious person would do. She began trying to identify the woman. She dug into the property history. She found the names of 4 previous owners. Cross-referenced them with local historical records. The woman in the photographs did not match any of the owners, or any owner's spouse, or any family member she could trace. I brought in a photo historian from UT who dated the photos to 1951 to 1963 based on photo stock and print characteristics. During that period, 2 families owned the house. Neither had any connection to the woman in the pictures. She said here, the way people pause when they arrive at the part of the story they've been building toward. The bundle was tied, wrapped, hidden. Someone put those photographs in that wall intentionally. They hid a woman in the wall of my house. For 7. Why years? She had the photos digitized and submitted them to 3 different facial recognition genealogy platforms. She got one match, a woman named Elna, who appears in a single 1948 church directory photograph from a congregation in Morristown, 40 miles east. She found Elna's death record, 1963. The same year the photographs stop. I framed one of the photographs and hung it in that room. Felt wrong to put her back in the wall. I don't know why she was in there. I don't know who put her there. But she was in my house for 70 years and nobody knew she was there. The least I could do was let her see the room. Host. Bridge number 1. There is a particular category of discovery, the thing that was hidden on purpose by someone who is no longer here to explain why. The thing that carries intention without explanation. The hidden object is an act of communication across time, directed at no one in particular, arriving anyway. The next story is also a discovery, but it's not about something placed inside a home. It's about something that was changed. Story 2. The Door That Changed Directions. Submitted by Marcus, 44, location: St. Louis, Missouri. Incident 202. 1. Marcus has owned his 1920s craftsman home in South St. Louis for 9 years. He is an architect. He knows buildings. He knows, specifically, his own building, every quirk, every deviation from code, every original detail he has lovingly cataloged and preserved. In September 2021, he walked out of his study and noticed that his hallway closet door was open. Not unusual, but the door was open the wrong way. The hallway closet in his home swings left. He knows this because he specified the hinge placement when he replaced the door in 2017. Left swing because the hallway is narrow on the right side and a right swing would block the bathroom entrance. The door was open to the right, fully, casually, as if it had always opened that way. My first thought was that I was misremembering, so I looked at the hinges. The hinges were on the right side of the door frame. They had always been on the left. He pulled out his renovation binder, the meticulous documentation he keeps of every modification made to the house. Photographs, dates, receipts. The photograph of the closet door installation in 2017 showed hinges on the left side of the frame. The screw holes were visible. The paint overlap where he'd touched up the frame was visible. He examined the current door frame. No evidence of previous hinge placement on the left. No filled screw holes. No paint inconsistency. The wood was uniform. Someone rehung my door. Not just rehung, they removed every trace that it had ever been hung differently. I checked the door hardware. Same hinges I installed in 2017. I recognized the model. Same screws. Installed so cleanly on the other side that there was no indication of previous placement. He checked his home security system. No entry during the previous 6 weeks, which was the last time he was certain the door was correct. "I'm an architect," he said. "I know what a door rehang looks like. Whoever did this did it better than most professionals I've hired. It was a perfect job. A completely pointless, unasked for, inexplicable perfect job. He had the door rehung back to left swing by a contractor. He asked the contractor to photograph every step. 3 months later, the door was right swing again. He sold the house in 2022. He still doesn't own a closet with a door that swings left. He told me he doesn't think he ever will again." Host Bridge. Number 2. I want to stay with that for a moment. Not the what, the why. Because the most unsettling part of Marcus's story isn't that something changed his door. It's that it changed it back. Whatever altered his home noticed that he corrected it. And corrected it again. That implies awareness. That implies persistence. The next story comes from a place you might not expect. Not a house. A storage unit in Nevada, and what a woman named Tracy found inside one she had owned for 11 years and never opened. Story 3. The Room I Never Used. Submitted by Tracy, 49, location: Henderson, Nevada. Incident 2023. Tracy rented her storage unit in 2012 when she moved from Denver. She put in furniture she couldn't fit in her new apartment and didn't want to sell. Her late mother's dining set, boxed books, a bicycle. She paid the monthly fee faithfully for 11 years. She never went back. In 2023, she was preparing to move again and finally drove out to empty the unit. I unlocked the padlock. My padlock, I recognized it. I have the key on my keyring. I opened the roll-up door. And I stood there. The dining set was there. The boxes, the bicycle, everything she'd left. But the space had been arranged. Not just arranged, lived in. My mother's table had a tablecloth on it that I did not put there, for chairs pulled out at angles. On the table, a glass vase with dried flowers, a small stack of books that were not mine, a folded blanket on the chair at the head of the table, a child's shoe, one shoe, left foot, on the floor near the far wall. The facility had security cameras. She requested the footage. The cameras covered the exterior entrance and the main corridor. Her unit was at the end of a row not covered by the interior cameras. 11 years of exterior footage had been recorded over on a rotating 90-day cycle. The facility manager confirmed that her unit's lock had never been reported as broken. Access logs showed that her unit had been accessed, using her account, 4 times in the previous 18 months. Each time, between 2 and 4 a.m., my account, my access code, a code I chose and never shared and never wrote down. The child's shoe was the thing she kept coming back to. She described it to me 3 times over the course of our conversation. Canvas, blue, size 6 toddler. Whoever set that table, they set 4 places, for chairs, for positions, and then they left 1 shoe, not a pair, 1. She paused for a long time. I've thought about it every day since. Felt like something I'd interrupted. Like I opened the door in the middle of a meal I wasn't invited to. Host bridge number 3. A table set for 4. A shoe with no pair. An access code that nobody else knew. I noticed that the accounts I find most resonant don't involve anything overtly threatening. They involve the wrong kind of ordinary. The familiar arranged in a way it shouldn't be. The suggestion of a life being lived inside your life, parallel to it, quiet, patient, using your things. Story 4 comes from Florida, from a retired firefighter named Carl, and from something he found in a place he had looked every single day for 31 years. Story 4, The Name on the Beam, submitted by Carl, 67, location, Pensacola, Florida. Incident 202. 2. Carl built his own home in 1991. Not contracted, built it himself with 2 friends over the course of a summer. He knows every board and nail. He framed the walls. He set the roof beams. He poured the concrete pad. In April 2022, re-roofing after hurricane damage, he was in the attic space for the first time in several years. He was examining the central ridge beam, an 8x10 heat cut, and placed himself in the summer of 1991. Carved into the underside of the ridge beam, in neat, deep, deliberate letters, a name. Not his name, not the name of either friend who helped him build. A name he did not recognize, 8 letters, first name only. Carved in a style he described as not hasty, not vandalism, like a signature, like someone signing a piece of work. I was in that attic twice during construction. I was the one who set that beam. There were 3 of us in that structure, and I know every mark we made in it. I ran my hand along that beam in 1991 when we set it. That name was not there. He came down and called both friends who'd helped him build. Neither recognized the name. Neither had been in the attic since construction. He researched the name. It appeared in a 1940 census record for a family who had previously owned the lot. Not a house on the lot, because the previous structure had burned in 1956. A man who had lived on that land, who had died in 1978, 13 years before Carl built his house. I sat with that for a long time. A man who lived on my land for decades, who died before my house existed. His name carved into the first beam I set, in my own attic, in a place nobody's been in 30 years. I asked him how the name got there. I think sometimes land remembers who it belonged to, and I think sometimes it says so. Host Bridge. Number 4. Land that remembers. I've heard variations of that idea across dozens of accounts now, from people who have no frame of reference for the idea, no cultural or spiritual background that would prompt it. They arrive at it themselves from the evidence. Something persists in a place beyond the lives that were lived in it. The next story is from New England, from a farmhouse in Vermont, and from something a woman named Judith found in her root cellar that she is quite certain was not there 24 hours before. Story 5. The Inventory That Wasn't Mine, submitted by Judith, 61, location Woodstock, Vermont, incident 202. 3. Judith has owned her 1830s farmhouse for 16 years. The root cellar is original to the house. Stone walls, earthen floor, access through a heavy wooden door in the kitchen. She uses it for exactly what it was built for: storing preserved food, canned goods, produced from her garden. In October 2023, she went into the root cellar to retrieve some jars she'd canned in September. My shelves were there. My jars were there. But there were also other jars. 12 of them. Same style as mine, wide-mouth ball jars. Sealed with the same wax method I use. But not mine. I know my own handwriting. These had labels in handwriting that was not mine and not anyone I knew. She examined the jars. They contained preserved goods, the same kinds she made: tomatoes, pickled vegetables, apple butter. The seals were intact. The contents looked correctly preserved. The labels listed contents and a date: September of the previous year. I had been in that root cellar 2 weeks earlier. Those jars were not there. She photographed everything. Showed the photographs and the jars to her neighbor, who had lived in the area for 40 years and had no explanation. Showed them to the woman at the local historical society, who examined the handwriting. She looked at the handwriting for a long time. Then she went and got a ledger from their collection, household records from a family that had owned my property from 1890 to 1931. She put the ledger on the table next to my photograph. The handwriting matched. Same person, same hand. Someone who died at least 90 years ago put 12 jars in my root cellar in the last 2 weeks of September. I asked her what she did with the jars. I left them there. They're still there. The seals are still good. I check them every month. She paused. Paused 2 seconds. I suppose I keep thinking she'll come back for them. And I want to be the kind of neighbor who doesn't throw out someone else's preserves. Host Bridge. Number 5. 5 stories. 5 things that have no explanation within the framework of how we understand time, space, and the physical world. And yet, I want you to notice something. Every single person in these accounts describes the encounter with more sorrow than fear, more longing than dread. Bev framed the photograph. Tracy thinks about being interrupted at a meal. Judith checks the jar seals every month. The 6th story is different. The 6th story is the one I'm most careful with, because the woman who sent it to me, her name is Dana. She's 36. She lives in Phoenix. Told me it took her 2 years to write it down. And when she finally did, she wrote it in one sitting at 4 in the morning and then called her sister and stayed on the phone until dawn. Story 6. The Crayon Drawing. Submitted by Dana, 36, location Phoenix, Arizona, incident 202. 1. Dana has no children. She lives alone. She has lived alone in her apartment in Phoenix for 6 years. She does not babysit. She does not have family in the area. In the previous 12 months before the incident, she had not had anyone under the age of 18 in her home. In July 2021, she was cleaning under her bed. something she did every few months, and found, pushed against the baseboard at the far corner, a piece of white paper. On the paper, a crayon drawing. A house, stick figures, 2 adults, 1 small child, positioned in front of the house. Crayoned in red, green, and blue. At the top of the page, in unsteady block letters, as a child first learning to write would make them. A name. Her nom. Not my full name. My nickname. The one my family uses. The one that is not on my lease, not on my mail, not on anything in my apartment or connected to my address. She describes sitting on her floor for a very long time, turning the paper over. Nothing on the back. No other marks. I went through every explanation. I had a small cousin visit 4 years earlier, but she was in the living room, never in my bedroom, and this was a different child's hand, a different style, and it had my name. A child who knew my name drew a picture under my bed. She kept the drawing. She has shown it to 3 people she trusts. None of them have an explanation. A handwriting analyst she consulted confirmed the drawing was made by a child approximately 4 to 6 years of age. The family in the drawing, she told me. 3 figures. I keep looking at it and I think, is that me? Is that supposed to be a version of my life? Or is it someone else's family, and they just knew my name? She was quiet for a long time. Either explanation is too much. Either a child who knew me drew a picture of a life I don't have. Or a child who didn't know me drew a picture of a family and knew what to call me. I still look under my bed every time I clean. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know if I want to find something or need to confirm I won't. Post Bridge. Number 6. I receive thousands of accounts. Most of them I hold for a while, turn over, and ultimately file. A smaller number stay with me in the way that Dana's does, not because they are the most dramatic, but because they carry a specific kind of weight. A child's drawing with someone's private name on it. The intimacy of that. The impossible intimacy. The last story tonight is shorter. The man who sent it, his name is Robert, he's 52. He lives in a suburb of Minneapolis. Described it in 11 sentences. The whole account, 11 sentences. He said he didn't need more words because there wasn't more to say. What happened was simple. What it meant, he said, was not. Story 7. The Watch. Submitted by Robert, 52, location. Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Incident. 2023. Robert's father died in March 2023. They were not close, estranged for most of Robert's adult life. He did not attend the funeral. He received a brief letter from an attorney regarding a modest estate, which he declined to accept. He did not want anything from his father's life. For months after his father's death, Robert found a watch on the kitchen counter of his home. He had never seen the watch before. It was not his. He lives alone. He had not had guests in the previous week. He looked at the watch. On the back, an engraving, his father's name and a date, the date of his father's death. I have never held anything that belonged to my father. I had no photographs of him. I had no way to know what he looked like in the last 30 years. And I had certainly never seen this watch. He called the attorney who had handled the estate. He described the watch. She checked the inventory. The watch was listed. It was in the estate inventory. It was documented as missing at the time the estate was settled. It was not found. Robert doesn't know how a watch from his estranged father's estate arrived on his kitchen counter, in a home his father had never visited, for months after the man died. He said, "I kept it. I don't know why. I don't wear it. I don't put it away. It sits on the counter where I found it. I look at it every morning when I have my coffee." A pause. The last pause of the night. I think he left it for me. I think that's what this is. I don't know what to do with the rest of it. The years, the silence, the things we never said. But he left me the watch. That much I know. 7 people. 7 things that lived inside American homes, in the walls, in the attic, under the bed, on the counter, that should not have been there. I've been doing this long enough to know what these accounts cost people. Not the telling, the holding. The carrying of something that the ordinary world doesn't have a shelf for. Most people carry it alone for years before they find their way to me, and what they tell me, almost without exception, is that they weren't frightened. Not really. Not the way we use that word. They were changed. That's the thing that the word horror misses. The accounts that stay with you are not the ones that frighten. They're the ones that expand something, that open a seam in the ordinary world and let something in that won't fit the framework you had before. You can't be unaware of it. You can't go back to not knowing the seam is there. Bev knows something was hidden in her wall for 70 years. Robert knows a dead man found a way to deliver something he couldn't say in life. Judith checks the seals on jars that a woman dead for 90 years put in her cellar. What are they supposed to do with that? What are any of us? You build a life inside a structure. You walk its hallways. You know its sounds. You trust its geometry. And then one day you find something that tells you the structure holds more than you put in it, that it has been holding things quietly in the walls and under the floors and inside the locked rooms, and that the accounting of what lives in a home is not now, and perhaps has never been, yours alone to make. I don't explain these things away. I don't think they want to be. If you have something like this, something you have been carrying in the specific solitude of the inexplicable, you know how to find me. I'll be here. I'm always here. Reading.